We'd been together for 23 years, married for 19, when everything started to unravel. My wife began acting cold and distant, like her mind and heart had already left the marriage. One day she just came out and said it, our marriage was probably over, and she was on some kind of healing journey through AA. Meanwhile, I was pouring myself into work, family life, music, woodworking, friendships, sports, you name it. She, on the other hand, was barely home. She claimed she was spending time helping a friend celebrate their sobriety, but it felt like she was just avoiding us. Our teenage daughter and I were left to figure out evenings on our own, without her. The distance kept growing. Eventually, my wife told me she didn't plan to file for divorce right away, she'd wait until our daughter went off to college. Every now and then, she'd throw in some confusing comment like, "What am I thinking? We've built a beautiful life together." It gave me false hope. But after nearly 5 months of this limbo, I couldn't take it anymore. So I broke down. I checked her emails. I searched her name on Lovebang. I confronted her. First thing she asked was, "What did you find out?" That should have been my warning. But like a fool, I told her. That was my first big mistake. She immediately fed me a new batch of lies, ones that conveniently painted the least damaging version of events. We only kissed once. It was awkward. We're just friends. I was devastated. I'd lived this nightmare before with my first wife. I told her she needed to cut all contact with this guy. After that, we tried to reconnect, spent a weekend together that felt like healing, or so I thought. But within a few weeks, the cracks returned. She slipped back into that cold, contemptuous behavior. Out of nowhere, she started criticizing my body, said I should work on my upper chest. I told her I biked 20 miles a day and was in great shape. I was confident in myself. Turns out, her new guy had a big chest. That was probably what was behind the jab. More red flags started popping up. So I got a hold of the phone she'd just upgraded from and went full forensic on it. What I found hit me like a brick wall: explicit texts, confirming everything I feared. It wasn't just emotional, it was fully physical. Her lover was a guy she met through AA. He was a 5 feet 8 inches opiate addict, bankrupt, estranged from his family, dull-eyed, barely educated. I'm 6 feet 2 inches, hold a degree from a top 10 university, and work as a well-paid tech executive. That confirmed what deep down I already knew: this was never about me. When I confronted her again, she wanted to know what else I'd discovered. I told her no, she'd only twist the truth again. I said, "Tell me everything, or get the hell out of my house. And don't forget, I already know more than you can imagine." That's when the dam finally broke. She poured it all out in waves: ugly, shameful truths, every humiliating detail of her spiral into self-destruction. I demanded she write everything down, every bit of it. Then I drove to the third-rate hotel where her boyfriend worked and confronted him in the lobby. Blew his whole world up. He ended up getting transferred by his employer after that scene. I told my wife I'd consider trying to rebuild things, but only if she put in the serious work to regain the trust she'd obliterated. She seemed genuinely thankful for that second chance. That was my second big mistake. What I didn't realize then was that our daughter had been quietly reading her mom's emails. She knew every grim, tawdry detail. A few weeks after that confrontation, our D-Day, our daughter got drunk, mixed in some pills, and drove her car off the road. By some miracle, she wasn't hurt, and neither was anyone else, but the car flipped and landed just above a raging creek. She got hit with a serious DWI, was kicked out of the National Honor Society, and became the target of shame at school. My wife decided she couldn't deal with any of it and left it all on me. Not long after, she had what I can only describe as a full parental meltdown. She screamed at our daughter, You are the reason I want to end my life." Then she sped off down the driveway, drunk and reckless. My daughter and I stood there stunned, unsure whether she was going to crash or not. Understandably, my daughter was devastated. I held her, reassured her that what her mom said was completely out of bounds. That outburst said everything about her mom's unstable emotional state and nothing about her worth as a daughter. Her mom came back eventually, said she was sorry, but minimized the damage she'd done. That's when the psychological shift began. My daughter went from being angry at her mom to feeling like she couldn't be angry at all, because in her mind, it might drive her mother to suicide. And if that happened, somehow, she'd be to blame. That guilt warped her thinking. She bottled up her anger and redirected it at me. And my wife? She was relieved. She saw her daughter's misdirected rage and did nothing to correct it. In fact, she encouraged it. It helped protect her fragile, alcoholic ego. She painted me as the villain, knowing full well what she was doing, emotionally manipulating and gaslighting her own child just to protect herself. It only got worse. My wife began telling herself and everyone else that she was the real victim. And in a twisted way, I think she actually believed it. One day, she told me with a peaceful smile, "I've forgiven myself." She started stalking the online support groups I'd joined for people recovering from infidelity, using what she found there as ammunition in future screaming matches. That was my third major mistake, letting her know where I went to feel safe. The final straw came a year into our so-called reconciliation. Out of nowhere, she exploded into a cruel, mocking rant that targeted my deepest insecurities, things I'd only ever told her in moments of pure vulnerability. She twisted those memories, fake cried, mocked my pain, and laughed like a maniac. That was my lightbulb moment. In that instant, everything became crystal clear. I had opened the door to forgiveness, given her a chance to rebuild, and she chose to torch every boundary of decency and trust. She weaponized the very things I'd only ever shared in love. After nearly 20 years together, that was the moment I knew I could never trust her again. From that point forward, I stopped feeling conflicted. I felt calm, certain. This marriage was over, and it needed to be. The divorce was brutal. I paid her $200,000 just to keep the house and my pension, both of which I'd worked for my entire life. Despite having a good income herself, I'd been the one paying all the bills throughout the marriage: mortgage, car payments, insurance, food, everything. Where her money went? Probably to her junkie boyfriend. Who knows? The only upside came from a mistake her lawyer made. They undervalued the house by hundreds of thousands of dollars, which saved me from financial ruin. I got to keep the home I dreamed of, a custom-built place on a ridge, nestled on 3 wooded acres above a protected river. It's not a mansion, but it's peaceful. It has a detached recording studio where I make music, and a woodworking shop where I find calm. It's the most serene place I've ever lived. 4 years later, life looks different. My daughter and I have rebuilt our bond, even though she still carries deep emotional scars. She got into a competitive college in New York City and is about to graduate. She tells me she's thankful I never spoke badly about her mom in front of her, even when it would have been easy to do so. Meanwhile, her mom still curses my name to anyone who'll listen. But my daughter sees the truth for herself now. These days, my ex refers to her affair as a cry for help and somehow blames me for not recognizing it as such. When she talks to the few friends she still has, she spins it like, "I only slept with that guy a couple times. He was too selfish to understand my pain." In her version, the sex was just some small thing. But what she doesn't, and probably never will, understand is that it wasn't about the sex. It was about the complete destruction of trust, something you can't just patch up with words. When I hear these stories trickle back to me through mutual acquaintances, my reaction isn't anger anymore. It's relief, genuine relief. Because now I'm with an amazing woman, someone who is emotionally grounded and strong. My daughter likes her too, which means the world to me. Looking back, I do have a few regrets. If I could do it over again, I wish I had. 1. Done a complete 180 and demanded a postnup as a true signal that she was serious about earning back my trust. 2. Asked her to move out the second I had proof of the affair. 3. Stood firmer in protecting my peace. But I'm proud of what I did do. 1. I stayed in it until I was absolutely certain. 2. I never talked badly about her in front of our daughter, no matter how tempting it was. 3. I found support, real, solid support from people who understood. 4. I confronted the man she was cheating with. 5. And most importantly, I never let myself believe it was about me. I knew her brokenness ran deeper than anything I caused. Update 1. A view from the other side of recovery. This part is for anyone stuck where I was 5 years ago. You may have read my story already. It had all the classic markers of infidelity: trickle truth, gaslighting, victim blaming, you name it. Add in suicide threats from my ex, and an actual suicide attempt from my daughter, and it truly became the darkest chapter of my life, worse even than my first failed marriage. Yes, I'm aware I've made some poor choices in partners. You could probably line up both stories and think you're watching an episode of Jerry Springer. But I want to offer hope to anyone going through this. Healing is real. Recovery does happen. I won't pretend I'm free of scars, they're deep and still raw at times, but I genuinely love the life I have now. It took a long time to move my broken heart through the rage phase and into apathy. That emotional detachment was the beginning of my peace. My ex and I had nearly 25 years together. We raised a daughter, built a dream home. I supported her through health scares, job losses, and multiple attempts at sobriety. She was there for me too, like when my dad died suddenly. We built something substantial. I loved her family like my own, and they loved me right back. But after the affair, once it became clear she wasn't willing to do the work to rebuild trust, I ended it. The next few months were a war zone. My lawyer advised me not to leave the house, so I moved into the loft of our outbuilding, barely heated, no plumbing, but it was quiet, and it was mine. We spent those months negotiating the separation agreement, which later became the divorce settlement. Our daughter was almost 18, so at least custody wasn't a legal issue. My ex went after everything she could get. But strangely, her attorney made a critical error. They insisted on a property appraisal that seriously undervalued the house. That mistake saved me. I paid $200,000 to refinance, kept my pension, and held on to the home I'd built. By summer 2016, I moved back in. 6 months had passed since the split. I started dating around, probably earlier than I should have, but after 2 years of hearing myself described in vile, degrading terms, my self-worth was in tatters. I needed to remember I was still desirable. The person I really connected with turned out to be someone I already knew casually. She'd been divorced for years after her husband, ironically a friend of my ex, cheated on her. We hit it off quickly. A few dates in, we became exclusive. She's stunning, Ivy League educated, also a musician, and has a heart of gold. But her most important trait? Emotional strength. She's grounded, stable, and kind. We've been together for almost 4 years now, and we've never had a serious fight. Disagreements? Sure. But we talk things through like adults. She's moving in now, and I've been slowly renovating the house for this new chapter of life. We're both nearing retirement, and for the first time in decades, I feel deeply safe. I trust her completely. She's nothing like the chaotic women I used to attract. She's calm, thoughtful, competitive only when there's a Scrabble board involved. My daughter, siblings, and even my 94-year-old mother adore her. My ex, on the other hand, is still bitter and emotionally unstable. She continues to badmouth me to anyone who'll listen, even to our daughter. And while it doesn't hurt me anymore personally, it does sting a little knowing our daughter has to hear that kind of venom from her own mom. Still, when I hear those stories now, I don't feel shame. I feel validated. I made the right call. And while there were moments of schadenfreude early on, that's faded. I honestly just want her to find some stability. I'd even like to get along with her again, not just for our daughter's sake, but because I know somewhere, buried under all that chaos, there's a good person in there. Deep down. Way deep. But she's in there. That said, if she never wants to speak to me again, that's fine too. Update 2. It's been about 5 years since I walked away from my ex-wife of 2 decades. I've done a lot of healing, but the scars, especially those connected to our daughter, still linger. One of the strangest, most painful ironies in all this is that the one quality I valued most in her was loyalty. Sure, we had our share of issues. Our marriage wasn't perfect. She had addictions, a narcissistic streak, and often disregarded my feelings. But I could live with all of that because I believed, with absolute certainty, that she would never cheat. She used to cut off friends who cheated on their spouses. She judged them harshly. She told me, flat out, if I ever cheated, we were done, no questions asked. I believed her. That unwavering loyalty was what kept me anchored through the messier parts of our relationship. So when I found out she had cheated, everything collapsed. The betrayal was scorching. Watching my family fall apart in front of my eyes was gut-wrenching. My sense of safety and emotional grounding was obliterated. And what really shook me was realizing the one thing I trusted about her, that she'd never stray, meant nothing. She didn't just cheat, she cheated multiple times. She lied about it. She used the 6 months of her affair to villainize me, to paint herself as some awakened, spiritual being while reducing me to a broken shell of a man. Her cruelty during that time was shocking. And when I stepped back and asked myself what I even saw in her now, her beauty was fading, her compassion was gone, and her intelligence had turned into a weapon for deceit, I had no answers. I gave her a full year to try and make things right, and she failed miserably. Yes, she tried it first. But she grew resentful. She didn't want to be seen as the villain anymore. One day, she looked me in the eyes and said, "I've forgiven myself," like I was supposed to celebrate that with her. And that's when I knew she was done doing the work, if she ever truly started at all. Over time, she began reshaping the story of her affair, painting it as some desperate cry for help, and she grew more and more bitter at me for focusing on how I was hurting instead of how she felt. Suddenly, I was the selfish one. I was fragile, ungrateful, unwilling to understand her pain. That twisted narrative pushed me further and further away from her. Then one day, she snapped. She exploded into a cruel, mocking tirade, targeting every one of my deepest insecurities. The kind of stuff only a spouse of 20+ years would know, the stuff you only ever share with someone you believe will never use it to hurt you. She did exactly that. She weaponized it. Laughed. Mocked. Taunted. She turned my pain into her performance. That was the moment the light bulb that had been slowly flickering just blazed white-hot. She wasn't just incapable of rebuilding trust, she was actively burning the bridge, also she could convince herself that I was the villain in her story. The sad part? I knew her vulnerabilities too. I could have easily returned fire and emotionally leveled her. But I didn't. I chose not to. Later that same day, I sat her down and said I was done. That was it. I told her to get the hell out. I was filing for divorce. I had given her more chances than she ever deserved, and she proved over and over that she couldn't be trusted. She wasn't just broken, she was toxic. Sure, the divorce cost me $200,000, but it bought me my freedom. And I'm far better off now. That said, I still struggle with some dark thoughts, visions of losing everything: my home, my family, my job. I've started therapy to work through it. Thanks for letting me get this off my chest. Update 3: Life after infidelity. I wanted to share a bit of light for anyone who's in the trenches right now. My story's a rough one: to 2 marriages, both destroyed by cheating, both with children caught in the crossfire. The first imploded after 7 years, the second after nearly 25. After the second collapse, I truly didn't think I'd ever be able to trust again. Therapy helped. A lot. That's where I realized something important: my picker was broken. I had a pattern. I kept choosing women who were beautiful and intelligent, but also self-centered and emotionally unavailable. In hindsight, they were a lot like my father, which explained way more than I expected. I re-entered the dating world a little too soon, but I was in my 60s and needed to believe that I could still have a positive experience with a woman. That maybe not all relationships had to end in heartbreak. And honestly, I still had a little game left. Through an old connection, I reconnected with someone I'd known casually for years. We were just acquaintances back then, but this time around, it felt different from the start. She turned out to be incredible, beautiful, Ivy League educated, a fellow musician, politically progressive, and full of heart. She's the polar opposite of a narcissist: compassionate, calm, loyal, and genuinely non-defensive. We've been together 4 years now, and we've never had a real fight. Sure, we've had disagreements, but nothing explosive. She has a way of talking through even the most sensitive issues so we both feel heard. It's always respectful. Always thoughtful. She moved in right before the pandemic hit, and while quarantine added a layer of stress to everything, it only brought us closer. We're now planning to get married. We've already shared the news with our kids. Soon we'll tell our aging parents and siblings. Our kids are grown and thriving: a therapist, a medical doctor, a veterinarian, and a fashion executive. They all made it through the chaos and landed on their feet. If you're stuck in heartbreak right now, I'm here to say, there's a future beyond the mess. Healing is real. And life can get better, so much better than you ever imagined. Update 4: 6 years since D-Day. 6 years ago last night, I confronted her again. She had admitted to just some kissing with a guy, but I'd found incriminating emails. I noticed she was still texting with him even after she supposedly came clean. I told her, we need to talk. Our daughter was sleeping over at a friend's, and I didn't want her anywhere near this mess. I reminded my now ex-wife of the things she said during her original half-confession, things I knew, deep down, were lies. She got squirmy. Nervous. Said, yeah, that's all true. But I wasn't buying it. I said, I know you're lying. Now tell me the whole truth or get out of this house and don't come back. She tried playing coy. What exactly do you think isn't true? I'd seen that game before. I didn't bite. I said, you want me to lay out what I know so you can build a new set of lies? No. Tell me everything, or pack your things. She broke down and confessed most of it, anyway. It wasn't just one encounter. It was several. Oral. Intercourse. Different positions. All done during the night she claimed she was out celebrating a friend's sobriety milestone in AA. I was devastated. Heartbroken. Furious. Every emotion you could imagine hit me at once: anger, grief, confusion. All of it. Redlining inside my chest. A few days later, I walked into the hotel lobby where her junkie boyfriend worked and said loudly enough for half the staff to hear, so this is your thing? Preying on mentally unstable, married women in AA? He was transferred out of state shortly after. Then came the veiled threats from him. To my family. My daughter. I'd already paid $200,000 just to keep the house and my pension. We tried reconciliation. At first, she behaved, but soon, she regressed into the same self-absorbed, narcissistic mess that led her to cheat in the first place. She started spying on my support group posts online only to use them as fuel for arguments. She told our daughter that her own suicidal ideation was her fault. My daughter turned all her pain inward, then lashed out at me, the safe parent. On the 1-year anniversary of D-Day, 5 years ago yesterday, my ex launched into another one of her mocking rants, digging deep into my soul, taunting my insecurities, laughing as she watched me react. That was it for me. My this moment. I knew time wouldn't heal everything, but I was sure that 5 years down the road, things would look different. And I was right. My daughter and I have healed, mostly. I'm engaged to an emotionally mature, kind, Ivy League smart woman. She has a daughter who's a therapist. I have a daughter who's an ER doctor, a son who's a veterinarian, and another daughter working in fashion in New York. I've got 3 grandsons who live less than 20 miles away. My partner and I are nearing retirement, and aside from the usual work headaches, life is calm and good. She's loyal. She's centered. She loves me as I am. I don't regret giving my ex a second chance. It erased any lingering doubts about whether we could make it work. We couldn't. And that's okay. Of course, my ex still blames me for her cheating. Because that's what narcissists and alcoholics do. But whatever. Let her talk. If you're struggling right now, if your heart feels shattered and your life unrecognizable, please know this, it gets better. Way better. I promise. Final mini rant, the art and the bills. So, almost 5 years after our divorce was finalized, I get an email from my ex. She wants a specific piece of art that had been set aside for her in the divorce settlement, but only if she picked it up within 60 days. She's 4.5 years late. There was also an agreement that we'd split any uncovered medical expenses if we both agreed to them. But she keeps sending me random bills, things that were either out of network or misfiled by insurance, and expects me to just cover them. I'd been cooperative up to now. I've paid some of them just to keep the peace. But now that she's demanding this incredible piece of artwork, something that was once in our state's art museum, I asked her whether she still planned to honor the rest of our agreement. Predictably, she blew up. Accused me of violating our daughter's HIPAA rights. It's nonsense. I'm guessing this is just her way of shaking me down for more money. But I'm not playing that game anymore. These days, when my daughter shares updates about her health, I notice she's opening up to me more. Some of it, naturally, is more suited for conversations with her mother, who's an OB/GYN. Still, I'm glad she trusts me. As for that piece of artwork my ex keeps hounding me over, I've decided to just hold on to it. Update 4, yep, she's actually crazy. I know everyone says their ex is crazy. But mine? I'm literally writing a song titled My Ex is Crazy. So after nearly 5 years post-divorce, we had yet another spat. She wanted a 3.5-year grace period to come pick up a painting she was supposed to retrieve within 60 days, as outlined in our original agreement. I told her I'd be fine giving it to her, but only if she stuck to the part where we're both supposed to stay in the loop on our daughter's uncovered medical costs and how the college fund's being used. She immediately got nasty, slinging insults and talking trash. I didn't engage. Then a few days later, my fiancé brought in the mail. There was an envelope addressed to my ex. Suspicious. We opened it. Inside? Just 3 old photographs from my ex's 40th birthday party, taken 20 years ago. What caught our eye was that the pictures included me and my now fiancé back when we were both married to other people. She was married to a friend of my ex's, which is how we ended up at the same table. Back then, we were barely acquaintances, let alone close. There was absolutely nothing going on. The photos were nothing incriminating. In one, we're just sipping drinks. In another, I'm looking off to the side of the room, and she might be looking in the same direction. The third one? We're mostly hidden behind a flower arrangement. There was no note. But it's clear my ex has somehow convinced herself that these ancient snapshots are evidence of a years-long affair between me and my now fiancé. The truth? We didn't start dating until 6 months after the final split, which itself came a year after our failed reconciliation, which came a year after her own affair started. These photos are from 16 years before anything ever happened between us. She's clearly projecting, trying to rewrite the past to make herself feel like less of a villain. We had a good laugh about it, but deep down, I worry she might be pushing this nonsense narrative onto our daughter. At this point, I mostly just feel sorry for her. Her deep-rooted narcissism and self-hate have led her to create this fictional world where she's the wounded one and I'm the betrayer. My response? Nothing. No reaction. No energy. Just silence. Update 5, the goal isn't forgiveness. For those of you just entering the storm, let me say this, the goal isn't forgiveness. At least, not in the way you might think. Your cheating partner will probably beg for forgiveness. And yes, at some point, you may offer it. But that's not the goal. I forgave my ex for cheating. She was deep in some sort of narcissistic fog, probably brought on by perimenopause. That doesn't make it okay, but it helps explain it. She really messed up her own life more than mine or even our daughter's. I can't forgive how she treated our daughter, though that's a whole other kind of betrayal. The real goal is learning how to trust again. Whether you stay and try to rebuild or choose to walk away, everything comes down to trust. If you stick it out, the odds aren't great, but it can work only if the unfaithful partner does the hard work, takes full accountability, and commits fully to rebuilding trust. And if you leave? The mission becomes learning to trust someone else again, and even more importantly, trusting yourself again. That's the real healing. Update 6. I got married. This past weekend, I married the woman I've loved for the last 5 years. After having not one, but 2 marriages collapse due to infidelity, both with kids involved, legal nightmares, therapy bills, and emotional wreckage, I found peace again. On Saturday, in our front yard, surrounded by family, my fiancé and I exchanged vows. We promised each other faithfulness, patience, and devotion for the rest of our lives. It was perfect. My 3 grandsons were the flower boys. They were focused and serious about the job, well, except the 2-year-old, who ditched the pedals and ran off to play with the toys he knows are in Grandpa's house. The minister was a dear friend of hers. The photographer, a longtime buddy of mine. Another childhood friend helped pull everything together. It was a sunny, hot, low-humidity day in North Carolina. Couldn't have asked for better. My new mother-in-law is in the intermediate stages of Alzheimer's, but she still recognized her daughter walking down the aisle, and that's something I'll always be grateful for. My new stepdaughter is 30, a therapist, and is moving with her math genius boyfriend on a postdoc fellowship. She's amazing. My kids now have a stepmom. My grandkids get another grandma. And I have a life that feels complete. For those wondering, yes, it is possible to find real love again. It is possible to trust someone again. There are still warm, loyal, wonderful people in this world. Update 7. An unexpected visit. Yesterday, my ex came by. It's been 6 years since our divorce, 7 since we tried to reconcile after her affair with the junkie she met in AA. That entire period, from the build-up to the affair, to the betrayal, to the attempted reconciliation, to the years after, was toxic. She did everything she could to damage the relationship between me and our daughter. And even though our daughter knows the truth, it still took years to repair the damage. A few months ago, out of nowhere, my ex emailed me. It was surprisingly conciliatory. After years of silence, I replied. Told her I was at peace, but I also called her out for lying about never badmouthing me to our daughter. She admitted she had, and apologized. So yesterday, she came by to pick up some old family videos. I assumed she wanted to digitize them. My wife made herself scarce. I told her it wasn't necessary, but she preferred to steer clear. My ex was nervous, apologetic, sad. We talked for about 15 minutes. She asked about her family. I still care about them, so I asked back. She admitted she'd gone a little crazy and ruined everything. She said she was happy I found the right person and meant it. I didn't say much. Just listened, nodded, stayed calm. She looked worn down, defeated. When I asked how she was doing, she snapped into cheerful mode. I'm doing great. But it felt forced. She was clearly still struggling. It became obvious that she was looking for reassurance that our 25 years together weren't all for nothing. I gave her that, gently. Said we had some good times. She apologized for not being there when I was going through a cancer scare during her affair. Thankfully it turned out to be benign. But still, that moment hit her. She began a string of apologies, then stopped herself. I told her it was okay now. She's still drowning in regret, but I was calm. And that seemed to reassure her and me that I've finally healed. There was no bitterness in me, just closure. I realized then that all my anger is gone. What remains is sadness about how she hurt our daughter and a deep sense of gratitude that I came out of it stronger. Healthier. At peace. No hugs. No lingering conversation. Just a short, quiet goodbye. And after she left, I sat down for a moment, looked around, and realized I'm truly okay now. Some scars will always be there. But I've made peace with it all. I didn't even notice when healing happened, but now that it has, I can finally say it with certainty. I'm free.